The Orlando Magic's faith was tested. That's the whole point of the playoffs. Franz Wagner has his playoff moment and the third quarter onslaught that tied the series. It's time for Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is April 27th, 2024. Good night, everyone who's listening to this on April 27th. That might be April 28th where you are. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the expert and site editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, the Orlando Magic's faith is tested as they battle the Cleveland Cavaliers. We're going to go a little bit off script. Forget what I wrote, back at the arena. The Orlando Magic's faith is tested in Game 4 of their series with the Cleveland Cavaliers. How they passed that test, how Franz Wagner rose to the playoff moment, and the third quarter onslaught that may have changed this series completely. We'll get to all that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you're listening to us, whether it's first in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for. The Locked On Podcast Network, it's your team every day. So let's start here. Let's start with the big thing. The first half of Game 4 between the Orlando Magic and the Cleveland Cavaliers looked very much like Games 1 and 2. At least that's what everyone was telling me, but it was a little bit different. But I will grant the premise to fit the narrative. Cleveland was in control. Donovan Mitchell was doing really whatever he wanted. Jared Allen was a big presence in the paint. The Magic were scoring better than they did in Games 1 and Game 2, which was at least, that part was encouraging. But it felt like Cleveland was in control. And that the series was slipping away. Not without a fight, but slipping away. Cleveland went on a 9-0 run, about 4-5 minutes left in the second quarter, took a 9-point lead to the locker room, and it felt like, okay, here comes that uphill climb again. Here comes the challenge, the struggle. This is what a playoff series is about. Honestly, it's been a while since we felt this, and felt this in a very real way. And certainly after Games 1 and 2, we were feeling this. We were down in the depths, in the pit, questioning everything about this team. A playoff series is existential. Let's get that, let's put that out in the universe to begin with. Every playoff series asks you existential questions. It asks every team to look at themselves, to look inward, and begin to think, are we that good? That's what a playoff series does. Every playoff series, you could go back to 2009, maybe not 2010, but every playoff series that is meaningful tests every team that's in it. It tests the winning team. It tests the losing team. We will talk again with our friends from Locked On Cavs here before Game 5. And we're going to be, exchanging our existential dread. Because that's what playoff series do. And so Orlando entered that halftime locker room in Game 4, thinking about some of these existential questions. Could they get their defense back? Was this the game when Cleveland would finally crack this Orlando offense or Orlando defense? Did Orlando have enough horses to keep up with the Cavs? An initial rush of energy of being back home dissipating as you would expect. Game 4, a much different game. If Cleveland is defending at the highest levels they can Orlando measure up offensively? These are the existential questions. They don't go away, but they get answered. Jalen Suggs, to me, had the quote that I think defines this really well and defines where the Magic are at. Jalen Suggs, we were in the locker room, told us after the game, faith is all a theory until it has been tested. So is love. Tonight was a perfect example of that, and of continuing to stay with it, of continuing to do anything that my teammates needed me to do, lock in defensively, be solid, bring energy, and get the fans in the game. The faith was tested tonight with the turnovers and continuing to play basketball. In times where we could have separated and gone our separate ways, we always came together. We always huddled up and talked about what was going on and continued to attack it together. Our resident philosopher, Jalen Suggs, there. That is like the mission statement of this team. Jamal Mosley has always empowered his team, his young team, to figure it out themselves, to work together, to find the solutions. And boy, did the Magic find solutions coming out of the locker room. And boy, did the Magic make a statement that they're now the ones seemingly in control of this series. Now, Cleveland is the one asking all those existential questions and finding it difficult to find answers. Yes, Orlando still has to win on the road, and it's going to be a challenge in Game 5. But now the Orlando Magic seem to have everything rolling for them. But it's easy to forget, at halftime of this game, before the 37-10 quarter, before the run that put this game so far out of reach, before all of that, Orlando was wondering, can we get Paolo Banchero going? Can we avoid the turnovers and our miscues that are costing us in this game? That's the existential dread of a playoff series. The playoff series asks you to confront your weaknesses, to overcome them. And frankly, the third quarter was nothing short of this team standing up to all of it. To saying, we see our weaknesses. Orlando took only 26 threes in this game. That's what I like to see. They missed their first 2 threes and they were like, okay, fine, we're just not going to shoot threes the rest of the game. That's cool. Obviously they did, but the Magic stared down the things that have given them problems throughout this series, throughout this season. And like Jalen Suggs standing up to Darius Garland, laughed in its face. Just stood there, chest out, beating their chest, waving to the crowd, enjoying life. It's easy to enjoy life when you're playing well. And faced themselves. The point that I made after game 1 was certainly the weaknesses we expected from this Magic team were coming to roost. That all that stuff hasn't gone away. After game 2, I believe the takeaway that I had from that game was that Orlando needed to find themselves. They needed to find this joy and this spirit that defined and carried them through the season. Obviously, in games 3 and 4, they found it. And while game 3, everything seemed to come fairly easy, and just the emotion and energy in the crowd made it easy. In game 4, they had to find it within themselves. And it's the same question that I'm sure the Cavs are asking themselves now. Can they find that spirit in themselves? Can they understand that this young Magic team isn't going to back down? Isn't going to fade? Isn't going to just wilt because you push them around a little bit? In fact, this Magic team loves it when you push them around. They love it when you want to get into their face because they're going to push right back. The Magic's third quarter onslaught, again, a 37-10 third quarter. The Magic outscored Cleveland 61-29 in the second half. Just absolute stonewalling defense, hounding everyone on both sides of the floor, aggressive, attacking the paint, picking apart this Cleveland team because Cleveland looked staggered. We could say Orlando got staggered and got hit with some heavy punches in games 1 and game 2. And even though they couldn't shoot and couldn't make a shot to save their lives, we came out of those 2 games saying that defense stood tall. The fight wasn't the problem. It was the execution and the shot making. And, again, maybe they got staggered for a few minutes. Cleveland right now is on their heels. Cleveland right now is seeking answers, and they don't have that defense to lean back on that the Magic had in games 1 and game 2. Cleveland's got to find it because the Magic found their fight. The Magic faced their demons and have stood tall for it. That was the defining feature of game 4. We expected a fight. I was talking to several other reporters. I was even talking to Magic staffers, and I was telling them The close game is coming. The close game that decides this series is coming. And pretty much all of them said, I think it's going to be today. I think today's going to be that close game that win or lose decides this series. The Magic made sure that didn't happen. Because when push came to shove, like Jalen Suggs standing over Darius Garland or standing near Darius Garland, they laughed at it. And that's who this team is. That's what defines this team. And why they are now tied 2-2 heading into a best-of-3 series with the Cavs starting Game 5 on Tuesday. Obviously, we had a playoff showing from Paolo Banchero in Game 3, how Franz Wagner made his presence known in the playoffs. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at Nissan. Are you the kind of driver who likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Nissan's incredible lineup also includes the 2024 Nissan Armada. The Nissan Armada will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. Tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop these wonderful cars today at nissanusa.com. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is also brought to you by our friends at BetterHelp. If I can find my little overlay here. There it is. Hi, BetterHelp. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is presented by our friends at BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. I'm sure the Cavs are feeling that right now. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who is unbiased on your life. So today, I want you to take a moment right now, just a couple seconds, and just breathe deeply and exhale all that negative energy out. Because there's no room for negative energy when the Magic are winning, when the Solar Bears are winning. I'm sure Orlando City is winning as I'm recording this. Maybe not. You might even be... So take that moment, take all that negative energy, and just send it away from you. That's okay. Sometimes you need a little bit more than breathing exercises, as much as Arnie Kander probably believes in them. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems in our favorite sports teams, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. That's a perfectly healthy thing to do. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible, and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel. It's a free channel on YouTube as well as on Amazon Fire TV. Programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming you might get from the national networks. Just the expertise of people who cover their teams every day. Locked On Sports Day brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Obviously, you don't win a game like this and win a game in its dominating fashion like this if you don't have a star show up. And obviously, Thursday night, we saw Paolo Banchero become a star. Playoff Paolo arrived on Thursday, and it was awesome to see. He was going to make sure the Magic win. And we're going to reserve some love for Paolo in our next segment. But this was Franz Wagner's moment. Welcome into the playoffs. Oh, Franz has been in the playoffs and has been playing well in the playoffs, but this was his big step-up moment. The Magic needed someone to get to the basket, needed someone unafraid, needed someone to create shots. Paolo didn't have it. He certainly didn't have it the way that he had it on Thursday, but the Magic got what they needed anyway, because Franz Wagner stepped up and everybody realized it and rode that wave. He had 11 points. I believe he had 9 points actually in the first quarter, added 12 points in the third quarter, including 10 over the first 7 minutes to help push the Magic to a 17-7 lead, 17-7 gap in that quarter to get back in the game. Finished with 23 points in the second half. Wagner, and again, 23 points. Remember, Cleveland only scored 29 in the second half. He finishes with 34 points, 13 for 17 shooting, 2 for 3 from 3, 6 for 7 from the foul line, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, hit a couple baby Dirk step backs, loved his mid-range jumper, loved that he was seeking that mid-range jumper. Franz Wagner was just awesome. He was just a star, and obviously we've talked about fourth quarter Franz, we've talked about FIBA Franz. Here is playoff Franz in his entirety. And you could just, again, like so many other players on this team, just feel that confidence oozing off of him. He got a technical foul for pointing at George Niang after he dropped him on the floor with a spin move. He hit an and one and just gave the and one signal and then urged the crowd to get into the game. Stuff that, frankly, we don't see Franz Wagner do. The emotion of this game was very real. And obviously, riding the energy and wave inside the Kia Center was a huge, huge part of the Magic's win. But look, we could scale back here a little bit. We're both looking at this series from a microscopic and a macroscopic view. Microscopically, the Magic can win. We're 2-2, best of 3 the rest of the way. The Magic can absolutely win this series, and they should be doing everything they can to win this series. Should you be disappointed if they lose this series? Maybe you should be at this point, because the Magic right now look like a better team. Cleveland is still yet to score 100 points in any game against the Magic in this series. I think I saw that they're the first team to not give up 100 points in the first 4 games of a series in almost a decade, if something like that. This Magic defense has been very, very real, and probably the real story of this series, as much as we want to talk about everything else. Like, the Magic were the number 3 defense in the league for a reason, and it showed up in the playoffs. But the Magic, ultimately, what this series is about, for this team, for this franchise, is getting everybody into the playoffs and seeing what things look like in the playoffs. It's essentially a proof of concept that this team, that the idea of what this Magic team is, and the core group of who this Magic team is, whether that will work in the playoffs, whether that will stand up and stand tall against good teams, against the pressure of the playoffs, whether they will be able to game plan for this team. And, look, Paolo had a bad game today. Not gonna deny that. Still did some good things, but Paolo had a rough game on Saturday. He stood tall. Franz Wagner hasn't had a 30-point game, obviously, until today, but he's been solid throughout the entire series. The Magic are getting proof of concept that, A, their defense works. Their whole defensive mentality, their defensive culture works in the playoffs. And B, their stars will step up to the moment. Their stars will perform and will deliver in these games where everybody knows what's coming, where everybody knows and is game planning exactly for who you are. This is the most encouraging thing of this entire series, is that Franz Wagner is getting to his spots and getting his shots and hitting those mid-range jumpers that we haven't seen all year. I think he took fewer than 50 mid-range jumpers. He's had like 5, 6, or 7 in the last 2 games alone. Like, it's been awesome to watch, to him add that, to bring back that element to his game that he hinted at early last season. Then again, like, Franz gets to the basket whenever he wants because no one can seemingly stop him, even Evan Mobley at this point. This is Franz Wagner's playoff moment. This is this on TNT big game was his moment to announce himself to the league and why he may well be an all-star next year. Franz Wagner stepped up in a critical moment for this team. And that is that's what stars do. I talk about this, we talk about this a lot with Paolo. This is what stars do. When your team needs you, when your team needs someone to carry you and just destroy the defense, just beat them over and over and over again, doing the same thing, countering, having no way to slow them down, this is what stars do. And Franz is obviously doing it on both ends because he's taking some turns on Donovan Mitchell. This is Franz Wagner at his best. And this is essentially what the Magic want to become. Like, let's leave it there. The Magic want to be this kind of a team. And Franz has stepped up to the plate on Saturday to deliver for Orlando and deliver this kind of a win. A really impressive showing from him and a really impressive showing from the Magic overall. And again, without Franz Wagner, the Magic lose this game. Like, no doubt about that. But Franz had his star moment. And it's not the first time, and it's certainly not the last time. Because if the Magic are going to advance in this series, if the Magic are going to win Game 5 or win Game 6, or if it needs to come to that win Game 7, they're going to need their stars to continue stepping up. It's the big question on Cleveland's side. It's the big question now. It's still the big question on Orlando's side. But Orlando's two young stars have not shied from the playoff moment, just like this entire team has not. That's the ultimate lesson of Game 4 is the Magic did not back down. They got tested, they got pushed, and they stood up, mean-mugged, and went about their business and got the job done. We'll go through the final box score, talk more about individual performances, not just Franz Wagner, because there were a lot of heroes today. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals who are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new role, but might be open to the perfect job. In a given month, more than 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. I know for me, as a job seeker, LinkedIn is my favorite platform to look to peruse jobs and what's out there because A, I know all the best companies are on there, and B, it's just organized really, really well. It links with my LinkedIn profile, so applying with my resume is super easy. If LinkedIn is easy for job seekers, imagine what it's like for job hirers. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire, so LinkedIn finds ways to make that process easier, even launching a feature that helps you write job descriptions so you can find the exact right person. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring, so why not you? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, let's go through the final box score as the Orlando Magic defeat the Cleveland Cavaliers 112-89. Series now tied. It is a best of 3 the rest of the way. Whoever gets to 2 first wins the series. It's really all you can hope for. I mean, if I thought that Game 4 was going to be the most intense game because, again, the difference between 2-2 and 3-1 is pretty stark. I certainly thought this was going to be a close game. The close game is coming. Like it's the close game is coming, and I think Cleveland fans are scared of it a little bit because Cleveland struggled in close games this year. Personally, I'm a little afraid of it because I trust Donovan Mitchell a lot more than Paolo and Franz in close games at the moment, but especially into playoffs. But the close game is coming, so just be prepared for that. But again, Orlando does a good job here just getting the job done. Like, again, Cleveland came out. They looked like they wanted to punch first. They wanted to really make a statement, make a physical statement. They spammed pick and rolls with Jared Allen. They hounded Paolo Banchero, sat on him, made sure he couldn't get into a shot, forced him into a ton of turnovers, got out and ran. There's a real emphasis from them to run on misses, run on turnovers, try and catch the Magic before their defense could get set. They were on pace for their best offensive game of the series. They had 60 points at the half. They led 60-51. Again, a 9-0 run late in the second quarter staked them that lead. But it was back and forth. Of note, in the first quarter, Cavs won the first quarter 23-22, but that's still kind of a win that you're not out of it in the first quarter. It was the first time all series, I believe, that we reached the mandatory timeout. If you don't know, NBA does require, for its TV partners, does require each team to call a timeout during each quarter. That's why there's a timeout in each quarter. There's 2 timeouts every quarter, guaranteed every quarter. But if you call it earlier than the mandatory time, then you don't get the extra break. That's your break. That's your timeout for the quarter. But we reached a mandatory timeout, which I believe is at 7 minutes, without either team calling that timeout. I believe that is the first time all series. So it really did look like this was going to be due for a tight game. But again, even then, Cleveland put a big, heavy punch on Orlando, and Orlando just kind of stood tall, glass jaw, glared at them, and was like, "Oh, that's all you got? That's all you got? We're going to keep grinding. We're going to keep fighting, and yeah, we'll make some mistakes, but we're going to keep going at you." And turnovers are really the only factor in this game for Orlando. They understood that. They went to the locker room, cleaned up their turnovers, cleaned up their paint defense. They gave up 40 points in the paint in the first half. They gave up just 14 in the second half. They cleaned all that up and then just put the vice grip on this game. And look, they were able to get out and run. They had 12 fast break points. They were able to push the pace a little bit more. They made shots, which obviously helps. Making shots is going to be the thing in Game 5. Orlando was able to kind of get themselves moving and get themselves going. And then obviously, once that ball started rolling down the hill, it was gone. Franz Wagner, again, 34 points, 13 for 17 shooting, 2 for 3 from 3, 6 for 7 from the foul line, 13 rebounds, 4 assists. Just an awesome, awesome game. Just got where he wanted on the floor, got to his spots, made his shots, finished around the rim, got to the foul line, just put pressure on that Cavs defense. So much of this is just being unafraid of the shot blockers. I thought early in Game 3 when the Magic were struggling, they looked a little bit hesitant around Cleveland shot blockers and around the bigs of the Cavs. I thought in this game there were maybe some moments of fear, worried about Evan Mobley around there, but like Franz Wagner had no fear. That dude was attacking the basket every opportunity. And Orlando's done a much better job bringing their screening out higher so that their guys have more room to get downhill. They've done a much better job spreading Jared Allen out of the paint. They've done a much better job focusing and finding the mismatches they like to attack, emptying that side, and really just being more composed on their drives. I mean, the way that the Magic attacked the basket in games 3 and 4 is night and day to what they did in games 1 and 2. There's a lot more patience, a lot more composure, a lot more space, and I think the shooting does help with that. Cleveland just hasn't been able to clog the paint, and so Orlando's starting to get those shots that they're used to getting. Orlando had 52 points in the paint. They did lose the paint 54-52. But Orlando, again, just they're 14 for 19 from the line. They got to the line a lot. Cleveland got to the line a lot too, but this was just, Orlando was playing their style of basketball. Like Cleveland just was not disrupting Orlando. Really, even early in the game, it just came down to, is Orlando going to turn the ball over? Is Orlando going to settle for shots? Or are they going to get to the basket? That's where we'll talk about Paolo Banchero. Paolo had a rough game. 9 points, 4 for 14 shooting, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, did have 4 turnovers, added 2 blocks. Love the 2 blocks from Paolo. Paolo was trying to get to the same spots and same shots that he got. He took a couple tough fadeaway jumpers, but Cleveland, I thought, did a good job, pressing him and pressuring him a little bit more. And that's, what opens things up for Franz Wagner, because now all the focus is on Paolo. Now that's one less body near Franz. And so Franz can get downhill a little bit more. And so that's what I really liked about this game from Franz, especially, because I thought that he did a good job getting downhill. I thought that he did a good job, again, just letting Paolo soak up some attention and fight and going through that gap. And eventually it's going to spin back the other way. So, if Paolo could have a good game, could have a much better game on Tuesday. I love that Paolo, so at some point in the third quarter, Paolo understood, I don't have it today. Let me just be a decoy. Let me just soak up some attention. Let me be a passer. Let me just be a little bit smarter. And again, that's all it takes. And so, not a great scoring game from Paolo, but I still think an impactful game. Obviously, the turnovers were impactful in the wrong way. He cleaned that up in the second half, made better decisions, became a better screener, began occupying space and occupying attention. And that really changed things for the Magic. If you are noticed, I think Justin Verrier of the Athletic noted of the Ringer noted this too during the game. Magic are using Paolo a lot more as a screener. I do like that. I think it's important to get Paolo the ball without using the dribble. I love the experiment with him as a ball handler. I think that's ultimately going to be good for him in the long run, but definitely has hurts the team in this situation. He's playing a little bit less on the ball as the initiator, as a creator, and a little bit more as a screener, as a mid-post guy, as a low-post guy. That's going to help him, and that's going to help this team. I think the Magic flipped a switch after game 2 and said, we got to do things that help us win the series. It can't just be about development. And again, maybe that cost them a game and a half. I'll go ahead and say, I think the lineup change cost this team a game and a half. I do think that. I think the Magic should be up 3-1 in this series right now. I'm not afraid to say that. I think they should be up 3-1, and the lineup change cost them. But again, we got to see what they got to go back. They got to go to Cleveland. They got to prove they can win in Cleveland. Wendell Carter, a nice game, 11 points, 5 rebounds, 4 for 6 shooting. Again, just excellent job on Jared Allen for the most part. Jared Allen was a lot more active and a lot more engaged. I thought Orlando's first half offense, particularly on Jared Allen, they struggled with Donovan Mitchell. Just, plain and simple. Donovan Mitchell was getting around screens, getting into the paint, forcing Wendell Carter to stay on him a little bit longer. Jalen Suggs was not getting back in time. The defense was not containing. They weren't cracking down on Jared Allen. So again, those dump offs to Allen were there. If they blitzed, Allen was able to roll the paint. Paolo was sometimes a little bit late as the low man. Jared Allen finished with 21 points, 9 rebounds, no offensive rebounds, 8 for 11 shooting, 5 for 7 from the foul line. So, Orlando had to find their way with Jared Allen. But again, second half, Jared Allen had 5 points. Donovan Mitchell did not score in the second half. He had 14. Donovan Mitchell had 18 points in the first half, got wherever he wanted. Magic really couldn't do much with him. Orlando shut that spigot off, and that's spigot. Sorry, as in the water pump. I apologize for the weird wording there. They shut him down. Like they forced him into bad shots. They forced him. He only took 4 shots. He didn't even shoot the ball. They forced him into areas where he could not shoot the ball, and they got the ball out of his hands. And look, Darius Garland's giving Cleveland nothing. Darius Garland is giving Cleveland nothing. 14 points, 5 for 11 shooting, 6 assists. So, he's doing some things, and this was one of his better games of the series. But right now, the X factor in the series is Darius Garland. If Cleveland can get Darius Garland going and get him some shots and get him downhill to support Donovan Mitchell, Cleveland will win this series. Orlando has shut him down. Like, he's maybe gotten a few spots here and there, but right now he's just not involved in the offense, just plain and simple. And now that Jalen Suggs is guarding Donovan Mitchell, Mitchell's life has been that much harder. And again, he played really well in the first half of this game, but Mitchell has found it tough to deal with Suggs, and Garland has not been able to take advantage of Harris, because Harris is also a good defender, by the way. And so it's a credit to the Magic's defense that they've been able to turn this guard matchup, which was seen as that was a huge disadvantage in games 1 and 2, into a bit of an advantage. Jalen Suggs, he was very upset with himself for his 7 turnovers, so that's 11 of the 18 turnovers from Suggs and Banchero. But 12 points, 4 for 7 shooting, 2 for 5. Again, just, Suggs was loose with the ball, no doubt about it, but he just sets the tone so much defensively. When people say that this team has that dog in them, it's Jalen Suggs. Jalen Suggs has that dog in him. He's just after everybody. I love watching him play, and he had such a strong game in this one. Off the bench, Markelle Fultz. What can we say about Markelle Fultz? Like, Markelle Fultz looked like Markelle Fultz for the first time in a long time in this game. 12 points, 6 for 9 shooting, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, or 4 fouls, sorry, not 4 assists, 0 assists. But just active around the basket, cutting along the baseline, hit a mid-range jumper, finished around the rim. Like, he had 2 offensive rebounds for a guard. That's crazy good. Fultz was Fultz. Like, we have not seen this kind of Markelle Fultz play in a long time, and it helped so much. It's a big boost off the bench. Mo Wagner had 7 points, just doing Mo Wagner things. Jonathan Isaac had 14 points, made 4 3-pointers. Where was that in games 1 and 2? But just, active, confident with his shot. He had the defining play of the game, besides Jalen Suggs getting into Darius Garland's face and laughing about it. The defining play of the game was Jonathan Isaac stealing an inbound pass and pulling up for a 3 and just sending the crowd into hysterics. That was part of a 7-0 run that expanded the Magic's lead from 7 to 14. And frankly, that's when the game ended. You knew the game, players said it after the game. That's when we knew that we had this game, was when Isaac hit that spot up three. So, Orlando gets contributions from everywhere. Franz is obviously the star. Their defense was just lights out, shut down Cleveland. Just, if you're looking for a difference in this series, like let's just do real talk here. If you're looking for a difference in this series, when Cleveland punched Orlando in games 1 and 2 and laid a heavy punch, Orlando kept fighting. It's a Pyrrhic victory. I'm not sitting here saying it's great, but it was always a better sign that Orlando trailed by 20 in Cleveland in game 2 and fought to get it to 9 with about 4.5 minutes to play and make Cleveland feel a little nervous and make Cleveland make plays. When Orlando laid their heavy punches on Cleveland in games 3 and 4, the Magic went up by 30. Like, honestly, if you're talking about the fight, if you're talking about the grit, if you're talking about how you face your weaknesses in a playoff series, Cleveland is facing them and wilting. They don't think they're splitting apart or they're losing, they're letting go of the rope, but the results tell you otherwise. When Orlando got punched in the mouth, they ducked their head and kept fighting even if they slipped in the mud. When Cleveland's gotten punched in the mouth, Cleveland essentially retreated to its corner and said, we'll get him the next time. That's frankly the difference in this series. And if it feels like Orlando is the one in control, even though they don't have home court advantage, even though they're a really bad road team, if there's a reason Orlando feels in control, it's because of that. It's because in 4 games in this series, Orlando has shown they will always fight, that they will always come back, they will always scrap and claw. They may not get all the way back, but they're going to do that. Cleveland in these last 2 games has wilted. And it's, there was talk after game 2. Jared Allen was asked, do you think you broke Orlando's spirit? And he said, maybe we have a little bit. And I won't deny it. Like, second quarter, especially when Jalen Suggs was out, you could just kind of feel the energy coming from getting sucked out of the room. And, that Jalen Suggs injury in game 2, that might have been the game that the Magic won on the road and to make this a 3-1 series. Like, that's it. I'm not going to sit here and say that it wasn't. It definitely felt like the Magic spirit was broken a little bit then. And look, the second half of game 2 was definitely kind of pro forma. But man, Orlando still fought. Orlando never let Cleveland get to 30, get to a 30-point lead. And, you've heard me say this a million times on this show because the Magic have been beat by 30 plenty of times. A 30-point win or a 30-point deficit says a lot more about the team that's losing than it does about the team that's winning. We're in a playoff series, and the Magic have had 30-point leads in the last 2 games. What does that say about the Cavs? And what does that conversely say about the Magic? To me, it says that this Magic team is in the fight. They want the fight. They want the smoke. And they're getting it and reveling in it as well. The Orlando Magic defeat the Cleveland Cavaliers 112-89. Game 5 from Cleveland coming Tuesday. We'll be back tomorrow to talk a little bit more about the Orlando Magic. And we'll be back tomorrow to talk actually with Locked On Cavs, I believe is going to be the plan. We'll talk with them before Game 5. So plenty to get to as we get ready for the biggest game the Magic have played probably since 2010. Since the 2010 Eastern Conference Finals, if not the 2011 Game 6 in Atlanta. So big game coming up here. We'll see what happens. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast and Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of them single podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. So latest on the Orlando Magic. Be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. Be sure also to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, for even more Magic content. I'll be doing another playbook video breaking down how the Magic won the third quarter. You'll find that tomorrow, Sunday, on my Patreon page at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. And as always, thank you for your support. Now that you're listening to me, be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Now available too on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic. This has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.